This is CBC Vancouver News.
The family of a man who died by suicide is challenging BC's Mental Health Act.
Who's responsible for that? And at the end of the day, there isn't that oversight.
They're concerned tonight around the procedures for discharging patients. Plus, BC Housing blasted by the Premier.
It is not acceptable. Key financial documents are still not available to government.
With revelations, the former CEO funneled funds to a nonprofit run by his wife. And 8 weeks and counting.
We want to go back to work. We are ready to go back to work, but we want a fair deal.
The transit strike in the Fraser Valley drags on. Good evening, I'm Michelle Ghoussoub. Dan is on assignment this week. Two sisters on Vancouver Island are sharing their grief tonight. They lost their older brother in February after he died by suicide. His family says BC's mental health system failed him. As Belle Puri reports, his story is one his family says has become all too common.
In a time of loss, memories flourish.
That's probably my favorite picture of us.
James Zimmer was a Red Seal carpenter, an adoring uncle, a musician, and struggled with mental illness.
But in more recent years, different things had cropped up where he was having paranoia, delusions, and was in and out of the hospital.
In February, when in distress, James was readmitted to psychiatric emergency services at Royal Jubilee Hospital. His sister was with him, and he spoke in detail of plans to end his life.
I asked the doctor, can you absolutely call me if there's any plans for discharge? And she had said, well, it would be up to James. And he gave a verbal agreement that yes, that I could get a call, which I had always gotten calls in the past. I was emergency contact.
The next day, James was discharged, no call. The same day, James went back and had himself admitted again. The next day, he was discharged again, and again, no call.
We thought he was safe. We thought he was where he needed to be to get the help he needed.
It was another 24 hours before family knew what was going on. One of the sisters called the hospital to check up on James and was told he was discharged yesterday. Around that same time, in a nearby wilderness area, a hiker had discovered James's body. His hospital band was still on his wrist. The BC Mental Health Act stipulates facilities must give notice to a near relative of a patient immediately after discharging the patient. No permission is required from the patient if a primary caregiver is actively involved in their care. The policy, it appears, is failing. Families say they're not consulted, they're not asked for context about a person's past behavior, nor informed about recovery plans or discharge. And the results have been tragic. Aaron Sanyo was discharged from the Hope Centre at Lionsgate Hospital, Glenn Fox from Royal Jubilee Hospital, and Nicole Chan from Vancouver General. All died by suicide within hours or days of being sent home. The Minister of Mental Health and Addictions declined to be interviewed. During a recent budget debate, the provincial opposition's mental health critic asked why families aren't advised when relatives are discharged.
I think we recognize that that this doesn't necessarily happen in every circumstance, and that it is incumbent in our healthcare system to ensure that there are better clinical procedures in place to support people who are in mental distress.
A Facebook page dedicated to a failing mental health system and in particular issues at Royal Jubilee has been inundated with stories of hospital indifference.
There's no accountability, right? Yes, this section is not being followed, families aren't being notified, but who's responsible for that? And at the end of the day, there isn't that oversight. We don't have an advocate for mental health patients anymore, so it's us advocating for ourselves, reliving the worst days of our lives, just trying to make it better for the next person.
Nothing will change the outcome for James's sisters, but one call, they say, and he may not have died that day.
James had a loving family who would have shown up for him in an instant if we had that opportunity.
Belle Puri, CBC News, Brentwood Bay.
Missing documents, deleted texts, altered meeting minutes, and millions of dollars spent without proper approval. BC Housing is under fire tonight for conflict of interest surrounding its former CEO. Mira Baines has more on the report released today on the long-awaited forensic investigation.
Tabling the Ernst & Young report on the forensic investigation of BC Housing.
The forensic audit into BC Housing, a $2 billion Crown corporation, was finally tabled and made public.
No one is above the rules. There must be strong safeguards in place to preserve the public's trust.
The province says the report revealed mismanagement involving the largest housing provider in the province. The report found former BC Housing CEO Shane Ramsey broke conflict of interest rules by directing funds to nonprofit provider Atira Women's Resource Society, run by his spouse, Janice Abbott. An initial report into BC Housing showed more investigative work had to be done, which led to a forensic audit.
Devices were seized and mirrored. Documents were collected. Databases secured and accessed to be able to do this work, and there was a lengthy investigation.
EB dismissed the board of BC Housing last year after it refused to act as concerns came to light. EB says there were attempts by Ramsey, who has since retired, to conceal information from investigators.
Altering the minutes of meetings, deleting text messages.
EB said while the audit does not excuse the unacceptable behavior, there's no evidence money was stolen. Even so, the province is freezing capital funding to Atira and says BC Housing has asked the organization for a change in leadership.
The province and BC Housing's new leadership will soon conduct an operational review of Atira and its financial transactions related to BC Housing, operating and operator agreements.
The province was under fire for not acting fast enough.
He buried the warning signs while tripling funding to Atira.
The opposition points out that Atira has received $90 million in funding from BC Housing since April 2020 without having completed its financial review process.
We can only imagine what's potentially happening at some of the other contracts they're letting. There's just not proper, rigorous oversight of government taxpayer dollars.
At the center of this controversy are Atira residents, which include women and children affected by violence. The province is assuring them that their housing is secure as another review takes place. Mira Baines, CBC News, Victoria.
And just a short while ago, Atira did release a statement. It said neither Atira nor any of its executive staff benefited financially from taking on new buildings, and also said there were a number of factual errors in the final report, but did not identify what they were. Our Justin McElroy read through the report and joins us now. Justin, why was there so much anticipation around this?
A lot of different reasons, Michelle. One is, of course, that the board of BC Housing was fired by then Housing Minister David Eby last year. A month later, its CEO, Shane Ramsey, did resign. Since then, we heard that the audit had happened, that the BC government had it and was waiting to release it. So there were a lot of questions of what actually would be in this report. But a second reason is simply how big Atira has gotten over the past few years, how dependent they've been on BC Housing funding, and how they're not just now one of many organizations in the downtown east side that are providing housing services. They're arguably the biggest. Take a look at this chart. It shows the largest housing organizations that BC Housing was funding over the past 5 years. And you can see Atira used to be with most of them. They've since had their amount of money given to them triple over the last 5 years, now $74 million as of last year. That's made them a huge player here and has grown the scrutiny around both their funding, their relationship with BC Housing, and whether they're doing everything accounting-wise that they should as an organization.
Okay, so we heard a number of issues raised. Was there any one particular smoking gun?
I mean, it depends on your perspective. The Ernst & Young report said that they found no financial impropriety at the end of the day in terms of Atira or Ramsey benefiting in any way. However, when you look at the red flags that were raised from Ernst & Young, from deleted text messages to issues with accounting by Atira and the amount of time it took them to give finances to BC Housing to explain their decisions, to worries from whistleblowers over the relationship by Ramsey and Abbott and the ways that Atira was able to get money from BC Housing. There's a lot. And this comment stuck out the most. If you take a look at this board, they said multiple individuals told Ernst & Young that Atira regularly bypassed the traditional communication channels by approaching more senior members of BC Housing directly for matters such as funding requests. Going on to say, in turn, senior members of BC Housing told other BC Housing employees to, quote, make it happen. That's despite the conflict of interest rules that were in place with Ramsey, which the report shows that he broke by texting several members at different times about issues going on with them. Ramsey, as we said, resigned from BC Housing last year while this investigation was going on. For the moment, Abbott is still CEO of Atira. We'll see what happens in the weeks to come.
All right, thanks, Justin. Our Justin McElroy reporting tonight.
Thanks, Michelle.
Fraser Valley transit strike has entered its 8th week. The employer and the union haven't met at the bargaining table since job action began. Yasmin Rania reports.
We want to go back to work. We are ready to go back to work, but we want a fair deal.
Fraser Valley transit drivers walked off the job March 20th over wages, lack of pensions, and work scheduling. They're still on the picket lines, pushing for a good deal. We were in Abbotsford in March learning about the impact of the strike.
And today we're back here again. We're going to check in with workers and people who would typically be taking transit to see how they're feeling.
We're hearing a lot of people's struggles. You know, they're costing them a lot of money for Uber. They just can't get to their jobs. But at the end of the day, as frustrated as they are, their support is growing as well.
Strike pay is obviously lower than what you're usually making. Are drivers looking for other work?
Many members have found part-time jobs to help them get through this because we've got to survive somehow. But at the end of the day, we're hoping that we get back to driving soon.
Communities like Abbotsford, Chilliwack, and Mission have been without drivers for over 7 weeks. And the regional route connecting the Fraser Valley to Metro Vancouver is also curtailed. Handy Dart is operating at essential service levels, only transporting people needing to get to dialysis appointments or cancer treatment. The union has called on the government to intervene to end the ongoing job action.
So what's your message to transit riders who have been waiting for more than a month and a half to get back on the bus?
We're here with you. We want to come back as much as you want us to be back. And call BC Transit. Tell them to get the bus service back because they have forever been monitoring the situation and we'd like them to start taking action.
The strike has been especially difficult for students at the University of the Fraser Valley who have to get to campus every day. Many are walking or relying on ride-hailing companies. Half of Janavi Sharma's monthly paycheck is now going towards transportation.
How much money have you spent in total since the strike started on Uber?
There was a financial form I had to fill for my school, so that day I calculated it was $750, and I was shocked by it. Like at end of the month, you are left with nothing because there's like very expensive, taking in consideration the inflation happening, the school. It's expensive, and you got to do what you got to do.
QP Local 561 and the employer First Transit last met at the bargaining table on March 16th.
The union says its line of communication is wide open if the employer is ready to negotiate on higher wages and a pension plan. For its part, the employer says it has proposed a 5-year settlement with total wage increases of up to 16% over 5 years. So that means a conventional driver could make above $32 per hour in 2024. Both sides haven't set a date to meet, so for now, the Fraser Valley mostly remains a transit desert. Yasmin Raneya, CBC News, Abbotsford.
WestJet pilots picketed outside Vancouver International Airport this morning, demanding a new contract from their employer.
We're out here today to show management that we're going to stand up and fight for our careers at WestJet and for the future of our airline.
More than 1,800 WestJet pilots have been seeking a new contract since September. The major sticking points are job security, scheduling rules, and pay. The pilots say if an agreement isn't reached by next week, there could be job action, which could range from an overtime ban to a full strike.
We need better job protection provisions within our contract, and we need proper compensation and scheduling to promote work-life balance.
WestJet pilots say job action could begin as early as next Tuesday. A change in the weather is bringing hope to flood-ravaged communities in the interior. The rain gradually eased over the weekend, much to the relief of people whose properties were underwater. BC's Emergency Management Minister says Cache Creek, the Okanagan Indian Band, and Grand Forks should see some stabilization in their local rivers throughout the week. Roughly 50 residents remain under evacuation orders. A little over 2,000 residents are still on evacuation alert. The warmer conditions, though, come with their own dangers as drier conditions ramp up the risk of wildfires.
There are currently 62 active wildfires in the province. Of these 62 active incidents, 91% are under control or being held. The majority of active fires and all current wildfires of note are in the Prince George Fire Centre.
Officials are reminding people to prepare for emergencies ahead of time, saying every household should have an evacuation plan.
Looks like we've got a female yellow-rumped warbler here.
Volunteers tagging migrating birds are hoping to keep their work flying, why their Richmond-based work is in danger of being grounded. Thanks for joining our commercial-free live stream. Nobody can outrun the march of time, but some seniors are trying to slow down the aging process and keep fit by working out with a personal trainer. Sanat Choi has the story of two Ontario women in their 90s who are already seeing the health benefits.
I've always been athletic. I'm going to hand walk everywhere.
What makes you not want to slow down and continue challenging yourself physically?
Well, that's the way to keep healthy. Otherwise, if you don't use it, you lose it.
On the next time around, we're going to make this harder, but I'll either make it higher or heavier.
Does he challenge you to do things that you didn't think you could do?
No, I think not. I think I always knew I could do things.
There we go.
That is awesome.
I'll take those, and I think they're going to ask you a question.
How are you feeling?
I got this thing.
Breathless. 2 days from now, I'll be 91. I'm absolutely amazed at what I can do. I didn't ever think I'd be able to do it, but when I do it, I'm just like, yay, I did it. I ran everywhere, all the time, right into my teens. I never went anywhere that I didn't run. He started out, I found that I could do the things that he chose for me to do. And it's good for your self-esteem to know that you can do some of these things that you didn't ever think that you would do.
What we do with them is what we do with everybody. So it's not necessarily any different. There's a little bit more support involved, but they're doing exactly what everybody else is doing and seeing those incremental benefits as they go. You know, we're always going to start with a little, call it rapport building. We're going to walk around, chat, see how they're doing, see how their lives are. And then I'll always have one kind of Metcon piece where we're just getting the heart rate going, getting the blood flowing a little bit more so that the other exercises we're doing feel a little bit better. We're always a little bit nicer feeling when we're warm. So the squat, I would say, is the most important thing we do, right? I always tell people, if you can't squat, I mean, you got a problem, right? You need someone helping you up off a chair, off a couch, off a toilet. So that's kind of our primary one. So we're squatting almost every time we're here, because that capacity is necessary for life. I care what you do in here, but I care more about how it carries over outside of here. So if they're able to come to me and say, hey, I'm able to do this task that I wasn't able to do a little while ago, or that is becoming challenging and now it's easier, that's what it's all about.
Doesn't matter what age you are, don't stop walking. Just keep up doing even just light physical things, because you'll wish you had.
Welcome back. A group of volunteers is working to capture migratory songbirds and track them for research. But as our Marie Zeidler is finding out, their work is up in the air.
A bird stuck in a net is normally a cause for alarm, but today it's a small celebration for science.
Looks like we've got a female yellow-rumped warbler here. What we do is we very carefully grab the bird.
This songbird is one of dozens of species that fly through Iona Regional Park in Richmond at this time of year. They're passing through on the Pacific Flyway, making their way north.
So there's our female myrtle warbler.
It may look harrowing, but rest assured, no birds were harmed in the making of this news story.
The idea is that the slight inconvenience that we put these individuals through is worth the broader information that we can glean about the population.
Every year at this time, a group of staff and volunteers gather at Iona to capture and release migratory songbirds. The birds are measured, weighed, and examined, with all of those details plugged into a database. They're then fitted with a nifty little ankle bracelet that lets other researchers track them over time.
And they represent sort of the status, the health of an ecosystem. If the birds are doing well, there's a pretty good chance that your ecosystem's functioning.
Wild Research has been gathering birds like this one for more than 12 years here at Iona Regional Park. But there are changes afoot, changes that could affect how the group does its research. Iona Regional Park is also home to Metro Vancouver's second largest wastewater treatment plant, an aging facility that has reached the end of its lifespan. The region has $10 billion in changes planned for the facility and the park.
We're, I think, just dealing with a little bit of uncertainty right now about how this very large long-term project's going to be impacting not only our operation, but just, the wild bird stopover site in general.
But Metro Vancouver says the changes are no cause for alarm and are likely to help, not hinder migratory birds.
Really, we're looking at the broader ecological connectivity of the island and trying to restore natural processes and trying to create bird habitat that is really sustainable over the long term, that's functioning in its natural state and is supporting even greater bird communities. So that research is important.
Metro Vancouver says the changes will create new bird habitat for years to come, habitat that will help birds like this one make their way home. Marie Zeidler, CBC News, Vancouver.
You're looking at a live shot of Harbour Centre. Amy Bell will have your full forecast next. It's a holiday in the UK as coronation festivities continue across the country. Today's focus is on encouraging people to volunteer. Our Chris Brown takes us there.
If Sunday's coronation concert was the big night out,
make sure we don't pick up any broken glass with the pickers.
The day after was billed as the big help out. It's a public holiday here, and the Royals are encouraging people to spend just a little bit of their free time helping out. Volunteering within your community is being touted as one of the lasting legacies of the coronation.
I think it was really great that the coronation has such an emphasis on service.
Colin Cooper is with a charity trying to create healthier urban ecosystems, an issue the King has advocated for frequently. Does it feel to you that Britain has entered a new era with King Charles?
I think so. I'm looking forward to it. So King Charles, obviously, he's very pro-environment and has been all of his life.
Over 50,000 events were planned across the UK, with some royals pitching in too, including little Prince Louis. The youngest child of William got to work the controls of a digger at a scout camp.
So, if
the King and Queen were not out today,
surprise,
but in a royal first, they did make a surprise cameo on the US TV show American Idol.
Because I just wanted to check how long you'll be using this room for.
Lionel Richie and Katy Perry, who headlined the coronation concert, are both judges on the program. Meanwhile, London police are facing criticism for how they handled anti-monarchy protesters. Some were arrested on Saturday under a new Public Order Act before they could even start protesting.
There was no grounds for arresting us, and it is an affront to democracy, an attack on our rights.
But Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said he's grateful to the police.
The police are operationally independent of government. They'll make these decisions based on what they think is best.
The arrests were one of the few notes of coronation controversy. In a statement released to mark the end of the weekend, the King and Queen offered their heartfelt thanks for making it such a special occasion. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell. Here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
May is Asian Heritage Month, and we're celebrating by sharing the stories of amazing Asian Canadians who are making meaningful contributions in the community. Visit cbc.ca/BC Community to learn more. And never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver inbox and keep connected with us.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace, installing the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
And the CBC's Amy Bell joins us now for a look at the forecast. Amy woke up to those beautiful sunny skies this morning.
Yeah,
so nice.
Yes, that's just a hint of what's to come for us this week. We're going to see a big warm up by the end of the week. Today, we just got up to about 16 degrees, so not unusual for this time of year. And we've seen a bit of cloud come in sort of in the evening. We've seen some shower activity out in the Fraser Valley, and there is a risk of some thunderstorms in some areas. One thing to note is that the sea to sky Highway 99 closed between Pemberton and Lillooet until tomorrow morning because we are expecting heavy rain in that area and we could see some landslides. So just keep that in mind for your travels. They're going to update us tomorrow around 7 o'clock. So we did have some patchy precipitation in many areas today, but for the most part, we are heading into a very dry and warm stretch, kind of once we get through tomorrow. Tomorrow, a bit of a transition day, so we will still see a risk of some showers. I would say early in the morning is the best chance, and then they'll sort of move away. But we're going to see this ridge of high pressure building for most of the province, and that is going to keep this precipitation from hitting us on the coast. So we're going to see those temperatures getting quite a bit warmer. Around Metro Vancouver, we'll see things around the low to mid 20s by the end of the week, and for the weekend it could get even hotter, especially out in the Fraser Valley. So you can see that is an awful lot of sunshine. Still not the warmest day tomorrow. 17 in Nanaimo, 11 in Whistler, and you will see some shower activity and good risk of some thunderstorms in Hope, and then high of 19 there. Taking a look at Dease Lake, 16 with mainly sunny conditions. Beautiful day with Prince Rupert tomorrow. We will see that unstable air around Prince George and Williams Lake and Kelowna, and that's giving us that risk of thunderstorms. But then for the 5-day forecast, get ready for it. You're going to need your sunglasses and your sunscreen. So with some showers tomorrow morning, we'll get up to 21 inland for Wednesday, 22 for Thursday, and then Friday and Saturday, we're getting awfully close to 30 degrees.
Wow, lots of heat coming.
Lots of heat, so be prepared.
All right, thanks so much, Amy.
You're welcome.
And that's all from us tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. For news anytime, visit our website. That's cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition on CBC Radio 1. Good night.